Yeah, we're both here.
Tim?
Yep, right here.
We'll see if we can get question two. I think there's a slight delay, so we'll have to give ourselves a moment here.
Maybe we can announce the next Steam Key winners while we're waiting.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Okay, so courtesy of Night Dive Studios, we have System Shock 2 keys for Mute City 08 and Northeast Monk. And I will help moderate the questions.
All right. Take a look here. This is one that I don't even know this exists. Paul, do you have any information about the Japanese System Shock version? Was the game released in Japan?
I honestly can't even remember if I was aware that it was released in Japan. Maybe there was a Japanese version. Is that a known thing, or is someone asking whether one was done for
Somebody was asking, the implication from the question was that it was a known thing, but I'm having the same reaction as you, that I don't think there was that much PC games being released in Japan at the time. But I think also from things I've learned from other studios, sometimes international versions of the game, you guys don't have much of a hand in, and it may just happen sort of after you guys have moved on to many other projects.
Yeah, we didn't work on any Japanese versions of System Shock. That I know.
So Sarah, I don't know if you're seeing some questions over there. I'm looking for some here. Oh, well, this is an interesting one. I think it's something that many people have noticed. System Shock 2 was both a project from Looking Glass and Irrational. And one of the questions here is, how much of the design was influenced by Irrational? And maybe an easier way of phrasing that is, was there kind of a splitting of the duties, or was it just kind of a melding of the minds?
Yeah, they're in the chat.
I think it's something that many people have noticed.
It's more the melding of minds, I think. I mean, the Irrational team were a year and a half earlier. Were all Looking Glass folks working on games like Thief, and so we all had a similar design thought process. And this particular group wanted to set up their own studio. They went off for about a year to work on a project, which, if I recall, didn't get traction. And so I think as Ken, who was on earlier, said, they were looking for some funding and to keep them going. And that's when we came up with the concept of them, co-developing with us System Shock 2. So it was a very collaborative effort. Ken was the lead designer on it and has a huge stamp on how the gameplay came out. But it was really a melding of the teams.
Yeah, and I also want to. Ken mentioned earlier specifically the contribution of Dorian Hart, who is very reserved himself about his contributions to these, but that's why it's up to the rest of us to really tout his genius. He was the primary systems designer for all of this, and a lot of the way that the moment-to-moment gameplay plays out was definitely Dorian's contribution.
Yeah, Dorian was a very early at Looking Glass. He came aboard at Blue Sky, actually. And, Doug Church had a huge influence on a lot of these games. He was the project lead on the original System Shock, and that bears a lot of his stamp. But I think one of the hallmarks about Looking Glass, which is a little bit different than a lot of other game studios at the time, is that it was really teams doing it. It was a very collaborative. I think Ken in his blog talked about, we had some interesting personalities. It really didn't matter how you dressed or what all that matters is how you creatively contributed. And we had people like the guys doing the audio for our games, starting with System Shock and going into Thief. Several of them came out of a rock band, a Tribe, an indie band. Had zero experience doing anything to do with software or game development, but became incredibly talented at doing this because they brought a very distinctive set of skills to the table, which, when combined with the other team skills, that's when it really took off.
So we have another question from AU HEPA. She's asking, I think this came up much earlier when Ken was with us. how do you play test the level near the end in a systemic game like System Shock 2, where the choices in the first part of the game affect the end game so much? I don't know. Obviously, there's choices in how you're building your character and how you're playing the game. Obviously, this is not the same thing, say, as I recall it being in like a BioWare game where you're making huge narrative choices that then have reverberations at the end. But how? I mean, the playtesting. I've always wondered. This just sounds so challenging.
This is Chris. I did QA for far longer than I want to admit. And I actually, that's where I cut my teeth, actually, was at Looking Glass on Thief. I did very little on System Shock. I was busy with Flight Unlimited 3 at the time. But when you have anything that's skill or class based and you have to test endgame, over time the QA department builds up like hundreds of different load files of characters, and you start using mitigated risk, right? So, all right, we know that the melee class hasn't really been giving us much problems, so you start spending less time with that type of character. But you know that the stealth guy has been making the AI go wonky, so you spend more time with that. It all comes down to just identifying where the nits and the problems with that particular piece of software is, and then focusing your attention on it.
I mean, I just tip my hat to you, Chris, and anyone who takes on that role of kind of running QA for a game of this kind of level of sophistication. It just stuns me. It's let's see. Another question here. GamerCaught asks, looking back, how do you feel about the ending of System Shock 2? Would you have changed anything? And if there's a way to answer this without identifying exactly what happens at the game's conclusion, that'll probably be for the benefit of those that may be introduced to it right now.
I think the answer to that is it all goes back to there's no right or wrong choices. We kind of find a path for the players to discover and figure their way through. It's actually hard doing endings of games like that because the game has to end. You need to have some way to wrap the experience up. And typically, certainly in games like System Shock 2, you come to a single ending point. And at some level that creates tension with the core experience where you kind of want it. It would be as if you could bifurcate into 1,000 different endings. We hadn't figured out how to do that with System Shock 2, so that'd be my answer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Given what was accomplished in the course of System Shock 2, I think not having the dynamic endings thing, which is still something of a rarity in a lot of games even today. I you guys can be forgiven that. There were a couple questions about Underworld Ascendant. I don't know if you even thought about this level of specificity, but in terms of runes and how the magic works in it, if it will be similar to what happened in Ultimate Underworld 2, and I believe the person was asking for a comparison between that and Arx Fatalis, which I know you guys didn't work on, but it was kind of obviously inspired by efforts on Underworld. I'm correct that you guys didn't assist on Arx Fatalis.
My only involvement was that it was one of the number of times over the years that we tried to get the rights to the Underworld franchise, and so I worked with Raf, who was the founder of that, to try to get those rights for that game in development. At that time, EA wasn't willing to consider that doing that, so it ended up being Arx Fatalis.
Yeah, with respect to the magic system specifically, we do get a lot of positive comments about the rune magic system, and we want to keep what people saw as valuable in there. Arx Fatalis, I think they were really interested in the sort of power of magic as symbols, and so for people who aren't familiar with that game, they went with a sort of gestural spellcasting system, similar to maybe what you've seen more recently in games like Okami. It was interesting. It was kind of problematic in some ways. We're more interested in the idea of magic as language, which is what in the rune magic system allowed you to sort of to experiment with combinations of runes that weren't necessarily documented and discover spells that that you sort of felt more sense of ownership over, and that's more the direction that we're interested in exploring in Otherworld Ascendant.
And I think this may be our final question. This is from Trent the Wanderer, who I also think was one of our winners of the Steam Code. Will Underworld Ascending give the players a chance to build meaningful and specific relationships with individual NPCs based on their actions and affiliations? That obviously is something that we see a little bit more and more in some games out there.
Yeah, we really want to try to see where we can go on that dimension of it. We have the three main factions, the Shamblers, the Dark Elves, and the Dwarves, and part of the gameplay is the arc of the story is that as a player you can essentially get taken under the wing, adopted as it were, by one of these factions, and part of that would be a story of you, starting in a vulnerable and don't know how to survive this space, and then having one of the factions sort of take you under the wing, your choice, and help you become master of the universe. And we think through that kind of an arc that you can create this real sense of caring about this faction who really helped you survive and grow in the underworld, make those kinds of connections. There aren't that many games that have done that, and some of them have done it in very interesting, lightweight ways. It was Floyd the robot years ago. I don't remember that, where the player really cares about a character, and it's pretty cool when you can make that happen.
Well, and obviously one of the ways that all of this can happen is if people can donate to the Kickstarter campaign for Underworld Ascendant. That has been, obviously it's been so much fun to be able to chat with you guys about System Shock 2 and look at System Shock 2. But Underworld Ascendant is the project that OtherSide Games is working on. They do need some assistance vis-a-vis Kickstarter, and obviously we're encouraging everybody out there to make a donation to help some of the guys who helped really bring together the acclaimed Looking Glass studio that I think is among the most influential studios out there on even games now, despite having made a lot of their games back in the 1990s. It's a game that I'm personally very excited to play. We're here with Paul Nurath and Tim Stelmach. Paul is the founder of OtherSide Games, and so Tim Stelmach is the lead designer on Underworld Ascendant. I've had an incredibly good time talking with you guys today. I hope this has been somewhat enjoyable for you as well. I have not, throughout my career, had the opportunity to speak to you guys and speak so specifically to the accomplishments of
while we watch Will just get nailed by something. Yes, Adam, this has been fun for Tim and I. Tim, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a ball.
No, we enjoy this. I haven't played, I have to admit, I haven't played System Shock 2, and last time was probably more than a year ago. So it's been a while. It's just fun to revisit this.
Oh, no, it is. And obviously we should also give a big shout out to Steve Grader of the Fulbright Company for having joined us earlier. Obviously Ken Levine of Irrational would also come on. And of course, Stephen Kick, who is the gentleman who has helped bring back System Shock 2 to the PC, so you guys can play it now. I've been playing it on Steam and trying to get back into it. He has been allowing us to give out some additional codes. And on that note, Sarah, do we have any more code giveaways to announce before we wrap things up today?
We do. We have Porch Zombie as one of our final winners, and Piran Jade, who had to get off earlier, but we will be sending her the code as well.
All right. And then once again, how are they going to be receiving the codes? Are you going to be doing some PMs following this stream?
Yes, we'll PM them through their Twitch accounts.
Awesome. Well, that's just an added bonus because I've been seeing many people in the chat who said by virtue of watching this, they really, really want to go back and play the game again. So once again, guys, please use this opportunity to just throw a little bit of money at the Kickstarter campaign for Underworld Ascendant. I'm Adam Sessler. I have had an absolute thrill. Paul, Tim, thank you so much for the 2 hours that you have granted me today.
Thank you, Adam.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
And the last thing before we go, you guys will be doing this again next week, correct?
Yes, next Wednesday. I don't think we've have a time locked in, but we'll be doing a playthrough of Ultima Underworld, which started this all.
Exactly. A very fitting choice. I'm so sorry.